Welcome to the Pin Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pin Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shan DeGore.
And welcome to the Pin Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about funding with purpose, and I'm excited to have Allie Sterling with me here today. And Allie is the president and founder of Allie Sterling Philanthropy, a national consulting firm that helps nonprofits, individuals and families, foundations, and corporations meet their philanthropic goals and positively impact their communities. She has a little bit more than 25 years experience. And what's exciting is that she actually gauges this based on family. So I'm excited to hear about that too. She has been named the inaugural winner of the University of Toledo Family Business Center's Doing Right for the Future of Humankind Award. And I'm going to be asking her about that. That's exciting. And she serves on various local, regional, and national boards. She holds a master's degree from the University of Toledo and proudly teaches courses on women and entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility at Bowling Green State University. I'm an alum, so I'm excited about that. Published a book about her experiences in personal and professional barriers of being a female entrepreneur, and it's titled 37, The Year I Stopped Making Excuses, Embraced My Power, and Launched My $1 Million Business. I'm excited to have her with me today, and I'm welcoming Allie Sterling. Hi, Allie.
Thank you, Shanda. It's so good to be with you. So great.
Excellent. So the first thing, before I go into my questions I knew I was going to ask you, is this great award, Humankind Award, and can you tell me a little bit about that? That's exciting.
Yeah, it's actually a lot. The word humankind was like one of those, oh my goodness, how could I ever live up to this? Why me? That imposter syndrome comes in, right? You know, when these kinds of awards happen. So it was UT's opportunity, their Family Business Center decision to highlight some companies that were just doing some great things, either for their employees, which was one of the other award winners. In our situation, it was to recognize our work in training young board members, young professionals to serve on committees, on boards, and so kind of that ripple effect, if you will. And so I guess in that regard, maybe humankind, but yeah, it was really an honor. And I serve in that Family Business Center, and it's just, I'm very passionate about it. So
excellent. Yeah, very blessed to really have a business center like that, and focused on, again, small businesses and legacy and entrepreneurship, of course. So I've just got the sense that this is something you're passionate about. But can you talk about your passions and why they are?
Yeah, you bet. So I think there's so many different ways to go about speaking to passion, whether it be personal or professional. Certainly, I have 3 girls, and they are all passion projects of mine in different ways, right? But I am passionate about raising them in a way that's consistent with who they are, but also with purpose. And so guiding them not too much, but not too little. And so we know how difficult that can be sometime. And so certainly passionate about that. Passionate, I think, also around the notion of legacy, which you just mentioned a few minutes ago. That idea of, as we relate to others around us who pass, I think through, that future and, what it is that I do today and what that might mean for others. And really making sure as I grow older that I'm doing things with intentionality, and I'm making decisions that work into an overarching sort of framework that all really has to do with legacy and when we're gone, what it means to be able to say that we assisted or helped or made an imprint or left a fingerprint on something important to us and important to others.
So that brings up right with funding with purpose and having an understanding and having purpose and understanding what that purpose is. And then possibly communicating that to others, which, again, you're a leader in your field and you help other leaders with those kind of discussions. Can you describe a little bit about what that looks like when you're helping leaders with this type of philanthropic desires.
Yeah, well, I love the way you kind of segued over to passion and purpose, and then being able to package that in a way that's attractive to others if you are a nonprofit, right? So nonprofits looking for funding, those that are highly successful, I think have done a really good job of wrapping their arms around who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing passionately, articulately, and in a way that then is attractive to funders, that they have an alignment, a value alignment, right, related to that. So it's like fundraising can be complicated or it can be super simple. Super simple is just, we have these needs and these funders or donors have these interests. And the closer you can align the two together, that it can happen on its own. People always say, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to ask for money. Everyone's very afraid about asking for money. You don't always have to ask for money. If you do a really good job of presenting your case and what your needs are and why, and then you are able to identify people and organizations, funders who want to, meet those needs, that's what they're looking at from a philanthropic goal perspective, that stuff happens on its own if you're doing a good job in both ways.
Yeah, I was wondering the steps to do that, because there may be individuals out here who say, I've wanted to raise money for a cause, instead of just giving money to another cause. I also see that there's a number of, just discussions about there might be too many nonprofits out there and there's only so many donor dollars. Can you speak to just what you're seeing trending and what that looks like?
Yeah, so I think that there are always probably too many nonprofits, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I think if you believe that you can do something differently or better, go for it. You have the ability, just like we do as entrepreneurs, to start our own businesses because we think we can do something different and better, and so I get that and I honor that. However, there's a scarcity sometimes of resources in, if you're looking to be funded, from grant resources and things like that. I actually am come from a place of plenty versus scarcity, but there are just some hard numbers that dictate the ability to be successful. We know the failure rate for whether it be a for-profit or nonprofit is high, because there's so many competing for. At that point, they're competing for small numbers of dollars, because if you're a small, emerging nonprofit, brand new, it is highly unlikely that you're going to attract the attention of a massive funder, right? And so you've got to stay the course then and, have the fiscal, accountability for a long period of time to get to that level of having that, the strength of those resources coming in. So it's difficult. It does not mean that people shouldn't try, but I'm a firm believer, if you feel that you have an approach to something that exists, see if there's a way that you can be an adjacent partner or add value as a volunteer or a board member to a mission that already exists and that is really financially stable and has a great reputation. So we are just sometimes too fast to just want to do something on our own. And there's a new nonprofit born like every 15 minutes, according to the IRS.
Really? So how many, roughly, do you know on a U.S. scale?
No, I'm not sure about that, but I know locally for a community of our size, there's roughly 1,500 nonprofits, which is really high for a community our size. And that's not including churches or this is, more or less religious organizations, but true nonprofit social services, et cetera. So in our community, we have an awful lot.
So what do you suggest to leaders, or how do you advise? Because again, they hire your firm to say, help us with philanthropy and raising money for a cause. What are you seeing trending from leaders? What kind of conversations? What do they look like when they start to come to you?
Yeah, everyone wants to raise a whole bunch of money yesterday.
Of course.
Does that surprise you at all?
No, not at all.
Or there's a deadline coming up that's tomorrow for a grant submission but truly our philosophy as a firm is one of making our nonprofit clients investor ready. So that's a phrase we use a lot. You want to be investor ready, right? So if you think about us and if I came to you and I said, oh, Shandelia, can I $10? Can I $10 for my cause? Yeah, you're probably going to say yes to that. I ask you for 100. I ask you for 1,000. I ask you for 10,000. the way you respond to my solicitation changes greatly, doesn't it? Why, what changes? Well, you might want to know more about the, kicking the tires a little bit, right? So
Right.
who's leading the organization? Who's, what other finances do you have? What other revenue do you have? Who's on the board of the organization? What's your strategic plan? So the more money you want to raise, the more you have to be investor ready. You've got to be ready for those kinds of questions, and you've got to have answers for that. So that's why if you're talking small game, $10 at a time, I mean, that's a lot of $10 to equal $100,000 budget. So you can see why a lot of small nonprofits fail, because it's a quantity game, which is just exhausting. So if we really want to create a sustainable fundraising solution for your nonprofit, and one that can scale as quickly as possible, as quickly as naturally and organically possible, you have to have an investor ready perspective. You have to have answers to things, and you have to have your house in order, because that's what donors expect. They are very sophisticated today, right? We have all these resources around us where we know how to research and how to assess from afar. So we just have to be ready in a way that I don't think things changed a lot in the last 5 years.
I was going to say, with COVID, have you seen any different approaches to fundraising that pre-COVID it was different than what you're seeing now?
Actually, in a really good way, we are seeing more solicitations happening than ever before from without geographic boundaries. So Zoom created, I think, it liberated many development offices and development organizations and individuals to feel that they could actually cultivate and solicit via Zoom. That used to be a huge limitation for a small nonprofit in Toledo, Ohio, for example, and their constituents, go south for the winter. They pretty much were like, well, I guess in March of next year, we'll start to see them again. And now there's nothing like that. So I think it's been a wonderful game changer for nonprofits in a real positive way.
That's awesome. Now, your company, very much like my company, is national. Are you seeing anything trending in different parts with your clients, different parts of the country? I know I do when I work with them. Do you see that as well?
We see, I think, board governance being something that has some trends. I think there are different parts of the country that look at boards as a little bit more high impact. They're a little bit more hands-on. The experiences that their board members, have commitment to shared governance and also to their role in the organization. I think we see in some centers of the country to be much more elevated than others. And so that's, I think, one thing that, that we can bring some best practices of what we see in it's not always bigger organizations actually at all. It's just a level of, when you pick leaders, they tend to reproduce themselves sometimes, right?
Yes.
Because one leader attracts another leader. And then all of a sudden you have this board that's really ironclad around who they are, what their role is, and how they elevate that mission. Well, it all boils down to leadership, doesn't it?
It does. And which leads me to my next question for you is the characteristics of effective leaders. In your experience, what are the characteristics you've seen, especially in the field of philanthropy, that are effective in this space?
I think integrity is the first one. I think without integrity, you got nothing, right? I mean, truly, integrity, means a lot of different things, but it's are you transparent? Are you willing to be vulnerable? Are you able to communicate in a way that people want to receive the information you're giving them? And how do you live your life? Inside and outside of the office. So integrity, I think self-awareness is another one that's really important to me, at least in our work and even how we select our clients. So we want to get a sense that leader is self-aware enough of where they have their gaps, right?
Yes.
And how they need to surround themselves with people who can augment their gaps. So that degree of self-awareness, I think, is a big one. And then I think ultimately it's energy. I mean, it's there's a phrase I always like to say, which is highest energy wins. I believe that. However, energy can be conducted in many different ways. And so, right, like from a cultural perspective, you feel an energy within a group of people, within teams, there's just a vibe that you understand and appreciate, or you don't. And it's just absent, So I think energy is a big component. And I think as it relates to funding and fundraising, you want to be able to be desired. You want to be able to be that kind of person who donors are like, oh yeah, I do want to see you again. I do want that second cup of coffee. There's just that connectivity. It's essential. I mean, it is a business that is no different than for-profit sales, right? You want people to want to be around you and vice versa.
Excellent. I think the qualities that you mentioned with integrity and the energy is both positive and there's negative energy as well. And especially for culture building, that's what we find too. It's so critically important. The leader, people look to the leader. There was a book out from years ago called The Dance of Anger, where it's a very good book.
Great title.
Yeah. And where individuals are, if one individual rises up and gets angry, but is trying to entice the other person to engage with them, and then if they're happy, they're trying to get the other person to bring that energy level to be happy. And so I think you're speaking to the heart of positive energy can actually encourage positive energy.
Contagious.
Yes, right.
In a good way.
Okay, contagious. How would you rank the importance of strength of that character? I think you mentioned it, and you mentioned integrity, and then the education experience to be able to do the fundraising, just being able to stay the course. So that's part of our PIN leader, how we look at these 3 different categories. What are your thoughts on how you would rank them?
As it relates to fundraising, so successful fundraising, I believe wholeheartedly that you have to stay the course. So that is what we have seen over the years makes or breaks a department or an organization's success in fundraising. I understand why. You take a small nonprofit, right? And you've got a leader who's wearing like 1 million hats.
Yes.
And so they're wearing all these hats, and then we're telling them, oh, but you need to do these 5 things this week related to fundraising. You need to reach out to these donors and make the call and put the coffee together and show them the case for support, when they're also unplugging the toilet, right? I mean, because they're wearing all of those hats. So I understand why staying the course doesn't happen, but I believe that it is the single most important factor for long-term sustainability as it relates to revenue. And so it's not enough to just have a good plan. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We make strategic plans, fundraising plans all day
all
long.
the time.
And the people who are successful are those that actually, find a way to have an accountability partner around that plan. They are executing it. They're staying the course. They're flexible enough, to realize where they've made some mistakes or they have to recalibrate, etc. But I think that that's, for me, of the things that you mentioned, I'd probably rank that highest.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough today for coming on and just sharing these pearls of wisdom. And I know with the book, I'm so excited to read it and to get to know it, and other publications that you'll be doing, hopefully in the future. And so I thank you so much, Allie. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gore. It's been my pleasure.
Excellent. And so with that said, please don't forget for the audience to subscribe and encourage others to listen in on the show. This particular show, especially if you're thinking about fundraising, if you're thinking about starting a nonprofit, do your research. And so until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Mays & Associates Ltd, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.